So, hi students, this is Dr. Arindam, and if it were a live class, I mean in person, I would have told you to guess the chapter from these diagrams, right? But as you all know the topic by now because you are watching this video anyway. So the chapter is hemoglobin. We're gonna read in detail about hemoglobin. Specifically, we deal with competency number 5.2, right? I told you what is not in your competency, you do not need to read at all. Okay, simply omit that. But since it is there in competency, it is very important. So, competency 5.2, BI 5.2 says describe and discuss functions of proteins, okay, and structure function relationship in relevant areas, right? So there are many proteins whose structure and function are related, right? MCI or NMC gave a specific example, for example hemoglobin and selected hemoglobinopathies. It means this is just one of them. Hemoglobin is one such example, and hemoglobinopathies, I mean diseases of abnormal hemoglobins, are one such example where structure and function are related. So it can be many, but since the competency mentioned specifically about hemoglobin, this is a must know area. Alright, so we should all know everything about hemoglobin. Okay. So basically today, not today, in this whole series of lectures we will be studying the chemistry and functions of hemoproteins. Okay, specifically we will give our importance to hemoglobin and myoglobin, right? So what will be our topic of discussion, broad topics, right? So we will learn what is hemoprotein, what are hemoproteins, we will learn what is hemoglobin, right? We will learn about the structure of hemoglobin, the function of hemoglobin, okay? ODC means oxygen dissociation curve, okay? Oxygen dissociation curve and how factors affect the oxygen dissociation curve, right? We will read what are the normal hemoglobins as well as what are the abnormal hemoglobins and what are the derivatives of hemoglobin. Okay, so let us start very slowly. Okay, we will start with hemoproteins. Okay, so what are hemoproteins? Definition is very easy. Okay, two important factors: hemoproteins are conjugated proteins. Okay, and the conjugated protein means protein is having something else conjugated with something, a prosthetic group. And what is that prosthetic group? It is heme. Okay, so hemoproteins are proteins that contain heme. Okay, simple as that. So remember, hemoproteins are conjugated proteins with heme as the prosthetic group, right? I will be going very slow. The slides will be like this, big, okay, and there will be little information, I mean very less information per slide. Okay, so you can take it slowly. I am taking for granted that you don't know anything. Okay. So see, hemoproteins are globular proteins. Okay, globular proteins whose axial ratio is less than 10. Now, what is axial ratio? I told you when we are looking at proteins from outside, okay, proteins can be of two types. They can be fibrous proteins, I mean the proteins that are long looking, okay, they look like strings from outside, not with naked eye but with electron microscope. Still, macroscopically they look like this. And what are globular proteins? They are circular. Okay, well, they are not exactly circle. Okay, globular means they are not globe. Even our earth is not a perfect circle, right? So imagine an ellipse. Okay, so an ellipse can have two axes, one is major axis and one is minor axis. Okay, these are all basic mathematical funda. So axial ratio means the ratio of major axis divided by minor axis. Okay, so what is important over here? If an axial ratio is more than 10 means major axis is 10 times longer than the minor axis. If it is so, the proteins will appear very long, it will be fibrous. Okay, however, in case of globular protein, that ratio cannot be high, so the major axis cannot be too much higher compared to the minor axis. So here the axial ratio is less than 10 for hemoproteins, globular proteins. Okay, this is the basic fundamental thing. Even you might not be needing this, okay, but you should know what is axial ratio. Okay, in case your any junior or any family member asks you, just like that. Okay, so what are the examples of heme containing proteins and enzymes of human body. Okay, let me switch on the AC. Fine. So examples, these are now important. Okay, examples you must remember. So till now everything was just about seeing, now it is about remembering. I will tell you which slide you need to exactly remember and which slide you can ignore, but I need to teach anyway. So heme containing proteins, again easy to remember, hemoglobin and myoglobin, right? And cytochrome, very important. When you read about respiratory chain, electron transport chain complexes, you will read that cytochrome P450 is there in Xenobiotics chapter, cytochrome B, cytochrome C1, cytochrome A, A3, multiple cytochromes are there in our body. Okay, they are heme containing proteins. Okay, there are some enzymes also apart from proteins. Enzymes are also, enzyme is also a protein, but they catalyze a specific reaction. You know, all proteins are not enzymes and all enzymes are proteins except RNA, ribozyme. Okay, anyway, so catalase is number one, peroxidase and tryptophan dioxinase or tryptophan pyrrolase. This is not a must know area, but these two are. Okay, catalase and peroxidase, these are important. They are having iron or heme group. Okay, remember hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome for heme containing protein, and catalase and peroxidase for heme containing enzyme. If examiner asks what else, it means you have scored a lot of marks and he is now trying to decapitate your mark tower. Okay, so that will be tryptophan dioxinase and tryptophan pyrrolase, but just remember catalase, peroxidase, you are more than enough guaranteed to pass. Okay. So hemoproteins are actually very vital for human body. How? For that we need to look at the hemoglobin. Okay, main hemoprotein. So hemoglobin is a major hemoprotein of the body. There is no denying it. Okay, if you are asked name the most important hemoprotein, it is of course hemoglobin. Okay, so hemoglobin. Okay, again I told you, see, hemoprotein was a conjugated protein that was having heme as a prosthetic group. Okay, so hemoglobin, since it is a hemoprotein, of course it will be also be a conjugated protein, right? But hemoglobin, heme as the prosthetic group and protein is the globin. Okay, please don't get confused. Hemoprotein are those proteins that has heme as a prosthetic group. Okay, for example, myoglobin is also a hemoprotein. Okay, we are now discussing hemoglobin. In hemoglobin, the prosthetic group remains same since it's a hemoprotein. Okay, so heme is the prosthetic part, the main protein is globin. Okay, so heme and globin makes hemoglobin. Now question for you is, what is the prosthetic part and what is the protein in myoglobin? Okay, that is for you to answer in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so see, hemoglobin is red in color. Okay, it is present in erythrocytes, that we all know. Even a class 4 student, I think class 1 student also knows about this hemoglobin. Okay, so everything that is red in the RBCs are due to hemoglobin, right? So a lot of RBCs are present in blood. Okay, and a lot of hemoglobin is present in one single RBC, and all of them help in carrying oxygen. Okay, that is the main function of hemoglobin. So again, this is important for MCQ purpose, this slide. Okay, so each RBC, each red blood corpuscle has approx 250 to 300 million hemoglobin molecules. Okay, you can take a screenshot, and the total amount of hemoglobin mean, okay, this is an average approximate, in 25 into 10 to the power 12 RBCs approximately amounts to 750 gram of hemoglobin. 750 gram is huge. Okay, fine. So this is it, nothing to understand, just to remember values. Okay, again a game of values. Hemoglobin in RBC occupies 33% of RBC volume. Okay, so the whole RBC volume, the 1/3 is hemoglobin, right? However, it is heavy since it has got iron. Iron is a heavy metal, it is heavier than carbon, nitrogen, all that, right? So 90 to 95% of the dry weight of RBC is hemoglobin. So 30%, 33% of the hemoglobin is contributing to the almost all of the weight of RBC. Okay. This is very important. Henceforth, any routine blood report you will be getting, okay, you should always be able to see whether the patient is having anemia or polycythemia, right? Anemia means less hemoglobin, okay. Polycythemia generally means a lot of RBCs, a lot of more hemoglobin, right? So you should know the normal values in order to detect those. In adult male, it is from 13.5 to 17.5. In adult female, it is 12.5 to 16.5. Please mind, these values may vary from book to book, okay. I recommend you to stick to your physiology textbook of Ganong, okay. Either physiology textbook of Ganong or medicine textbook of Harrison. Any one. Please don't Google values from Mayo Clinic or any other. A textbook value is the reference range that will be finally assessing you on. Okay, so remember roughly. However, when you are seeing patient report, you should know hemoglobin of 11 means anemia, hemoglobin 9, 10 means anemia, and within 13.5 to 16.5, 17, 14, 15, 16, these are all normal range, right? In very rare cases, hemoglobin value may go very high, where when there are history of repeated blood transfusion. There are many reasons for high hemoglobin. Polycythemia also is another reason, but you should remember at least the normal range of hemoglobin in human blood. Okay, this is very important. Remember, the unit is in gram per deciliter. Okay, apart from hemoglobin, proteins are also albumin, globulin. They are also another such unit where it is in gram per deciliter. Okay, all other, excuse me, all other constituents of blood, for example, blood glucose, urea, creatinine, SGOT, SGPT, all of them, generally, if they are enzymes, they are in unit per liter. If they are ions, for example, sodium, potassium, they are in milli equivalent per liter. But something which is measurable, for example, blood glucose, urea, creatinine, all of them are in milligram per deciliter. Okay, you should never make this mistake again. Everything is in milligram per deciliter at your level other than hemoglobin and proteins. Okay, fine. So this is very important again for MCQ purpose. Okay, 6.25 gram per day is the amount of hemoglobin that is biosynthesized during erythropoiesis in the bone marrow. So per day the amount is 6.25 gram. Okay, sadly there is no specific way to remember. You should write all of them and make sure you see them before the day of exam if you get time, and if you are lucky, this may come as a question in exam, and if you are not lucky, either you may not get time or this question will not come. So can't help it, it's like that. So synthesis of hemoglobin, this is important for physiology. Okay, MCQ begins in the pro-erythroblast stage. So all the stages of hemoglobin, RBC secretion, synthesis, hemoglobin starts appearing in pro-erythroblast stage. Okay, and generally in erythroblast stage 65% already appears, and then the rest 35% appears when it enters the reticulocyte stage. Okay, another important question for physiology, you know the RBC actually has nucleus, but then it disappears. Okay, so where nucleus appears, it is intermediate normoblast. Okay, not related to this chapter, but just I am telling you for your knowledge. Okay, so this is a picture that you will get in all physiology textbook. Sadly or happily, there is no biochemistry involved in that. This is simply how RBCs are synthesized one after another, how many days it takes place, what are the colony forming units, when it is iron dependent, when it is iron independent. So all of them you will be finding in your physiology textbook, and I am sure this will not be asked in any biochemistry exam. But since we are studying hemoglobin, I have to include this in slide, without which the study of hemoglobin will be incomplete. Okay, so just remember the stages of erythropoiesis for physiology. Okay. You can see after the normoblast stage, the nuclei has disappeared. Did I say nucleus appears in normoblast? I was wrong. Okay, it is after which it disappears. Anyways, I may be confused. You please verify with your physiology textbook. But what I am sure, hemoglobin appears in proerythroblast stage, right? See now, hemoglobin is related to respiratory mechanism. Why? Mainly because our ancestors moved to aerobic lifestyle. We need oxygen for living. If we continued our deep sea lifestyle, for example, even now deep sea animals are anaerobic. They live in the dark and they don't need oxygen, right? So they don't need any oxygen carrying mechanism as well. So hemoglobin is not essential for them. However, for all higher animals, it is very essential since we have adapted to the aerobic pattern of respiration. Now, there are various terminologies for hemoglobin. Okay, hemoprotein, definitely it is a hemoprotein. I already told you hemoglobin and myoglobin are more important heme containing proteins, right? So, since heme is a phosphatic group, it is a hemoprotein. It is a chromoprotein. Why? Because it has color. The color is red. Okay. It is a metalloprotein, definitely, since iron is present. Okay. It is a respiratory protein. Definitely, it's related to all respiratory chain, electron transport chain, as well as in respiration. Okay, every day, every moment, it is related to respiration. So, along with cytochromes, hemoglobin is also a respiratory protein, right? And oxygen binding protein. So, there are multiple terminologies by which hemoglobin have been referred in various textbook and various lines. All of them generally refer to hemoglobin unless they specifically mention myoglobin. Okay. So, these are few basic information that I hope you realize it is still introduction that is going on, right? So, these are all about hemoglobin. Now, let us read some historical aspects of hemoglobin because they are also very important. And why did it grab the color of all, I mean, why did it grab the attention of all the research workers, scientists? Because it had a red color, right? So, anything which is red color, just like the line in this slide, right? It deserves, I mean, invites interest, right? So, this was the first protein. So, these are all MCQ. Similar MCQs are also there for insulin. Okay, remember insulin is the first protein that was sequenced, etc., etc. Hemoglobin is also first in many categories. So, first protein to be crystallized. Okay, hemoglobin is the first protein to be crystallized in 1849, right? First protein whose mass is accurately measured. Okay, and the measure, I mean the molecular weight is actually 67 kilodalton, right? So, first protein whose mass was accurately measured and the first protein that was crystallized, and the mass came to be around 67,000 dalton or 67 kilodalton. Not only that, since it was first to be crystallized, there are multiple studies that we do in crystals that can be done on crystals. Okay, when a protein or when anything can be crystallized, multiple things can be done. So, hemoglobin is actually first in that category as well. So, first protein to have the structure determined by X-ray diffraction method. X-ray diffraction definitely can only happen when something is crystallized. So, again important MCQ. Also, first protein to be studied by ultracentrifugation, very important. These are all historical importance. Okay, examiner may just ask these in viva, one liner. He will not ask these at first, definitely. But if he is asking chromatography, that he can ask centrifugation, then simply he can enter. He is trying to enter hemoglobin. He will say, okay, can you tell me what is the first protein that was I mean studied by ultracentrifugation? Then your answer will be hemoglobin, and from everything else, even from cell fractionation, over there is centrifuge, examiner can go into hemoglobin. So, these are the bridging areas. So, very important. If you fail to answer the bridging question, your next sequence of questions gets cut off. So, again the first protein to show point mutation can cause problems. So, from here examiner can go into genetics as well. Okay, or if examiner is asking about mutation, he may ask historical question about point mutation. What is the first protein that showed this whole thing? Then your answer will be hemoglobin. So, there are multiple things that can go back and forth from hemoglobin to various chapters. Okay. So, remember again, this was the first protein to be crystallized. Okay, after crystallization the mass was measured accurately with 60 that came to be 67,000 dalton. X-ray diffraction study was done first studied by ultracentrifugation, and the first protein that showed that mutation, point mutation, very important, not any other mutation, point mutation can cause problems, especially in relation to sickle cell anemia. Okay. So now that we know something about the history and nature of hemoglobin, let us now look at the structure of hemoglobin. Okay. So as I told you, there are two parts. One is heme, that is the prosthetic group, and another is the protein part, that is globin. Okay. Now hemoglobin, okay, is a tetrameric unit. It has got 4 subunit. Okay. You all know that when multiple subunits of tertiary structure come together, they are known as quaternary structure. So whenever something is mer, dimer, trimer, tetramer, these are all quaternary structures that we are referring to. Okay. So it has got a quaternary level of structural organization. These 4 subunits are held together with the help of in such a way so that there is no allosteric, I mean steric hindrance. Okay, so all of them are related in allosteric fashion, and the quaternary conformation, okay, imparts a very compact nature to this complex protein. Okay, everything is squeezed together, 4 units are squeezed together. Okay, I already told you it is a globular protein. Now in the previous diagram I told you the axial ratio is less than 10. Okay, but this was a 2-dimensional diagram. In reality it is both length and breadth and something height also, either it goes into the plane or it's coming out. So it's a 3-dimensional structure. So over here all the 3 measurements of axis have been shown. It is completely unnecessary for you to know, just it is to tell you that whole thing is spheroidal. There is an x-axis, length of x-axis, length of y-axis, as well as the length of z-axis, right, in 3D. What is more important is the tetrameric unit, right. So hemoglobin A, the adult subunit, that is majorly present in us. Okay, in fetus hemoglobin F is present. I will tell you about all the other hemoglobin variants, but let's stick to the basic convention. Unless it is otherwise mentioned, we will be talking about the adult hemoglobin, that is hemoglobin A. Okay, is composed of 4 globin subunit. Okay, now among the 4 globin chain, okay, subunit, it has got 2 alpha and 2 beta. They are named as such, alpha globin and beta globin. So all total there are 4 globin. Okay, 2 of them are alpha and 2 of them are beta. See, if you have gone through the textbook already, you all know this. You are not supposed to know this basic information, but even if you don't know, that's why I am going very slow. So remember, 4 subunit, 2 alpha and 2 beta, right. So each of this subunit, okay, each of this subunit of hemoglobin, okay, they have got 1 globin chain and 1 heme group, okay, with a central ferrous iron. Okay, 1 globin chain, 1 heme group with a central ferrous iron. Okay, I will show you what I mean by this. So this is alpha globin, beta globin, and this is the heme, okay, that is present in each of the globin chain. So this is how, this is a schematic representation, right, but in reality, okay, this is how it looks like. Okay, the whole thing is a compact spheroidal protein. Okay, so this is a sphere, this is a globular sphere. Okay, this is another globular sphere. Okay, note this, when we look at the secondary structure, this is very important concept. Okay, when we look at the secondary structure, so these spheroidal, this whole globular protein that I am telling you is actually the tertiary structure. So fibrous, globular, these are all tertiary structure. Okay, but when we look at the secondary structure, what is inside this globe, then we find something very interesting. I told you in person, and I may have told you in previous videos as well. In general, whenever a protein is fibrous, okay, the constituent secondary structure is always alpha helical. And in general, whenever a protein is globular, the constituent proteins, I mean secondary structure, is always beta pleated sheet. In that class, I told you there are exceptions. Okay. For example, a fiber that has got beta pleated sheet is silk fiber. Okay. And example of globular proteins that has got secondary structure of alpha helix are these hemoglobin and myoglobin. So now if we look at the secondary structure, we will see that these alpha and beta chain are actually helical in shape. Okay, so these helix actually fold among itself to form a spheroidal protein or globular protein. Very, very, very important. So the constituent protein is actually, the polypeptide is helical in shape. So remember, this is an exception. Globular protein, secondary structure is alpha helical. Otherwise, all alpha helical secondary structure generally represent a fibrous protein. Fine, I have told you this, and again I am repeating it here. Okay, so you can see there is a central ferrous iron in each heme group. Okay, and this is how it happens. So each has got a globin chain along with a central heme, and in the central heme there is a ferrous iron. Okay, so what is there? Again, let us recap. I will be telling the same thing over and over and over again. I will be repeating it so many times. It may sound boring, but it is just for your proper recollection, right? So one subunit, okay, one hemoglobin molecule has 4 subunit, okay. One subunit has got one polypeptide globin chain. One subunit, okay, one of 4 I am talking about, and it has got a one heme, okay. So what does 4 subunit makes? Whole thing multiplied by 4. So 4 globin polypeptide chains and 4 heme. Okay, fine. Now, one heme binds with one oxygen molecule. This is something new. Okay, so now we are coming to the binding properties of this whole hemoglobin unit. Since one heme binds to one oxygen molecule, how many heme are there? Definitely 4 heme. Okay, so 4 heme in one hemoglobin can bind to 4 oxygen molecule. So what is actually one oxyhemoglobin? One oxyhemoglobin is actually 4 globin, 4 heme and 4 oxygen. Okay, so one oxyhemoglobin is 4 globin, 4 heme and 4 oxygen. Fine, this should be very clear. This concept should be clear. Now, I told you there are alpha, beta, okay, 2 alpha and 2 beta. They are actually visualized as dimers, okay. See, there are 1 alpha, 1 beta, 2 alpha, 2 beta, right. So what we are saying over here, in hemoglobin 4 polypeptide chain are visualized as 2 identical dimers. So dimers are not, dimer means 2 identical protein, okay, that 2 dimer should make an individual protein. For example, we read in actually there are tetramer, 2 alpha and 2 beta, right, but functionally they can be subdivided into dimer. So when we need to divide into dimer, remember dimer means identical. So if we say 2 alpha and 2 beta, they are not dimers because they are not identical. So what are dimers? Alpha beta is a dimer, okay. So if we divide it from here, this will be a dimer. Wait, pen. So this is a dimer if we divide it from here, okay. So this is 1 alpha beta, this is 1 alpha beta. Now this is a dimer, okay. So why do we consider dimer? There are multiple reasons, okay. So not only alpha, these dimers function in permutation of their 1 and 2 variant. For example, there can be combination of alpha 1, beta 2, alpha 2, beta 1, like that, okay. So there are 2 beta 1 and beta 2 and alpha 1 and alpha 2, okay, that we all know, okay. See, 2 dimers, okay, now if we consider these, one alpha beta and another alpha beta, okay, these dimers have to be connected to each other, right. So this is what we are referring. 2 dimers are linked with what bonds? Weak polar bonds, okay. So movement can occur freely. I mean, if there is one alpha, one beta, and another alpha, another beta, there is only very weak polar bond. So this movement along this axis can occur freely. Get my point? It means this can rotate over here. So since these are connected by weak polar bonds only. However, okay, the two polypeptide chains within a dimer, now we are talking about one dimer, means one alpha and one beta. So these are the two polypeptide chains that we are referring. So considering this as a dimer, is a part of dimer, this is one polypeptide chain, alpha chain, and this is another polypeptide chain, okay, beta chain. So now we are referring to this. These polypeptide chains are held together tightly, okay, they are very tightly attached by ionic bonds and hydrophobic interaction, which prevents their movement with relative to each other. Means this alpha and beta, this cannot move, okay. However, another alpha and beta can move with respect to this alpha and beta, but within this alpha and beta is more or less fixed, because ionic bonds and hydrophobic interaction are much stronger compared to weak polar bonds, okay. Of course, you may say, sir, these are also weak bonds, right? Yes, we are not considering covalent bonds over here, we are relatively considering the two bonds. Definitely covalent bond is the strongest, okay, but there is no covalent bond. Ionic bond and hydrophobic interaction are existing between alpha and beta, and between one alpha beta and two alpha beta there are weak polar bonds. So when weak polar bonds are there, this can move very freely, but this cannot move, okay. This is the basic information that you need to understand, this very concept, okay. So thus hemoglobin with a quaternary structure is native conformation. What do we mean by this? Native conformation means naturally occurring, the most folded structure in which a protein is stable, okay. So hemoglobin is the most stable when it is in quaternary form, and it is in functional in that form only. Next, we should look at the significance of 4 hemoglobin units, okay. What are these 4 hemoglobin units? Okay, let me repeat once again if there is any confusion. Weak polar bonds are holding 2 dimers, okay, and ionic bonds and hydrophobic interactions are holding 2 polypeptide chains, right. The most stable conformation is when all the 4 tetramer, that is each 4 polypeptides are folded together and are held together with the central ferrous ion and everything. So that is the naturally occurring conformation, which is also known as native conformation, right. So what is the significance of these 4 hemoglobin subunits? Why there is 4? Okay, I told you there are 2 alpha and 2 beta. It's because these 2 alpha and beta, again very important slide for MCQ, okay. These 2 alpha and beta, they can work in permutation and combination, okay. They actually govern multiple functions, okay. So what are they? When we are considering alpha 1 beta 1 and alpha 2 beta 2, they confirm stability of the molecules. Again, this is just to remember at your level. If you want to really know how it happens, you need to look at the X-ray diffraction patterns and the wavelengths that they emit, and you need to look at the laws of diffraction, then you will understand, okay. Simply not needed unless you are doing a PhD on hemoglobin, okay, simply unnecessary. So hemoglobin alpha 1 beta 1, this alpha 2 beta 2 dimer, so like this, okay, they actually confirms the stability of the molecule, okay. This interaction between alpha 1 and beta 2 and alpha 2 and beta 1, so when we are considering crisscross, okay, this crisscross, they confirms solubility of the molecule, okay. Since this and this, they are interacting, okay, a unit of this and a unit of this in a crisscross way, they contribute to the solubility of hemoglobin molecule, okay. And the main function of hemoglobin, that is cooperative binding and the oxygenation and deoxygenation, then we should take into consideration these two, both alpha subunits, alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1, beta 2. Okay, just remember these. I cannot make you understand because this is simply fact. Okay, and the principle of making things, principle to make you understand these things are beyond the scope of this lecture. So alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, when you are considering two identical polypeptides, that is 2 alpha, 2 beta, they play a role in oxygenation, deoxygenation. When we are considering alpha beta 1 and alpha beta 2, they are contributing to the stability, okay, structural stability, and solubility are contributed by alpha 1 beta 2 and alpha 2 beta 1. Okay, and again this is a nice to know area, this is not a must know area. Okay, by no means, this is a nice to know area, but again MCQs may come from anywhere, right? See, more information. The alpha 2 beta 2 or alpha 1 beta 1 interface has 35 amino acid residues in contact. What do I mean? Imagine this is one alpha, this is one beta, again this is one alpha 2 and this is beta 2. Okay, everything is in contact. Okay, so this alpha 1 beta 1 contact or alpha 2 beta 2 contact, these are much more stronger, I told you. So they have 35 amino acid residues in contact. Over here total 35 amino acids are there. Okay, and alpha 1 beta 2, for example, this with this, okay, this is also connected, so everything is connected. These balls, for example, these spheroidal globular proteins are all connected to each other. Okay, everything is connected. So if we are considering this and this, alpha 1 beta 2 and alpha 2 beta 1, they have got 19 amino acid residues in contact. So this contact is much stronger than the crisscross contact. Okay, MCQ, MCQ, MCQ. Okay, yes, I am going in a bit detailed fashion because I am covering everything over here, but you may choose to omit or commit depending on the previous year's university papers. Okay, and the previous university paper generally discusses about structure function relationship of hemoglobin. Okay, what are the abnormal hemoglobin, what are the diseases, everything that I told you in the synopsis. So actually these things are there in the syllabus. Depending on how much time you get to answer the question, you may or may not include these things in your hemoglobin structure, depending on the marks and depending on the amount of time that you have left while answering in the exam, right? So again, if we look from the outside, the outer area is relatively hydrophilic, so water contact is allowed. Okay, composed of a polar amino acid. The outer surface are polar, whereas the interior are all hydrophobic. Okay, that influences protein folding. This is common to all, generally all soluble proteins. The outer part is hydrophilic, that interacts with all polar solvent, for example water, and inside all the hydrophobic things are packed. Okay, so now okay, 15 minutes left. We'll briefly cover the chemistry of heme, right? So what is heme? Okay, again same thing, it is a prosthetic group of hemoglobin. Okay, all hemoproteins rather, this has got a prosthetic group that is known as heme. It is a red colored pigment, right? It is located interiorly in the hydrophobic heme pocket in the globin subunit. I told you one globin subunit, and the heme is present at the center. Okay, and I told you the outer part is hydrophilic and the inner part is hydrophobic. So this heme is actually located in the inner hydrophobic pocket, okay, of globin subunit, and it is a metalloprotein, metalloporphyrin, because it contains iron. Okay, what is this porphyrin? We'll get back, we'll come to it very soon. This is actually a porphyrin ring. Okay, remember this is not the structure of heme. Okay, I have not shown iron. This is in general the structure of all porphyrins. So this is how a porphyrin ring looks like. Now all porphyrins will vary depending on, over here there will be many subgroups and side chains that will be attached. So based on the differences of these side chains, the porphyrins will vary. Okay, for example, hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome, everything will vary depending on the side chains only. Okay, so chemically heme is a ferroprotoporphyrin. This is very important. This line ferroprotoporphyrin, why do we say that? Ideally there is a chapter that deals with heme synthesis. Okay, that will be taught later on when we show how succinyl CoA and glycine actually unites to form heme. So there are multiple steps in heme synthesis. Okay, we'll be going into that. So those diseases are porphyrias, and ultimately at the last step heme is produced. Okay, and the intermediate steps are all porphyrin. Okay, so iron comes in, everything happens, and you can look into it if you are interested, but we will be eventually covering it anyway. So synthesis of heme is basically a pathway, just like glycolysis and all those things. So two components start and one after another intermediates form, and ultimately heme is formed. So in that pathway all enzymes are important, the enzyme deficiency disorders are important. We will be dealing with that very soon, but just now remember, till now we were talking heme is a hemoprotein. Okay, that is a vague term, layman's term for example actually. Okay, so ferroprotoporphyrin is more chemically correct name for heme. Okay, so see, I told you the general porphyrin ring. Okay, when iron is attached it becomes a ferroporphyrin. Okay, and you see these are the side chains, okay, that are present in hemoglobin. Okay, for example, this is methyl. Okay, this is propionyl. Okay, this is propionyl, this is vinyl. So these are all the side chain. So a protoporphyrin ring, protoporphyrin 9 ring, this term will be clear when we discuss the heme synthesis. Just now know this, since heme is a ferroprotoporphyrin 9, okay, it has got a protoporphyrin 9 ring and an iron group. So if you omit this iron group, okay, this is the protoporphyrin 9 ring. Again, let me tell you, nobody will ask you to draw the structure of hemoglobin. Okay, but there will be image based questions where you need to mark the correct one, and hemoglobin is this one. So this is protoporphyrin 9 ring. Okay, now if you look at the structure of heme, okay, see, this is a structure of protoporphyrin 9. Okay, the ring I will be showing you again, that is cyclically substituted a tetrapyrrole ring structure. Okay, this is actually one pyrrole ring. Okay, the whole thing porphyrin ring, if you look at single one, this is a pyrrole. Okay, so 4 pyrrole make a tetrapyrrole ring. Okay, this whole thing is porphyrin. Okay, porphyrin or protoporphyrin, and if we add one iron it becomes ferroprotoporphyrin. So all things are related. So I am basically going in reverse. Okay, I am telling you the thing that you should be learning last at the very beginning. Anyway, so cyclic substituted tetrapyrrole ring. Okay, so tetrapyrrole ring has substituted groups in systemic manner. These are methyl vinyl, methyl vinyl, methyl propionyl and propionyl methyl. What am I talking about? See, okay, methyl vinyl, again methyl vinyl. So see, methyl vinyl, then methyl propionyl and propionyl methyl. This thing you need to remember. Okay, just write this down. MVMV, MPPM. Okay, M stands for methyl, V stands for vinyl. So examiner might give 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, and they will give you this match the following type of question may come. Everything in an MCQ. What was that? So everything. Roll number 89, please mute yourself. Okay, कोयल सी तेरी बोली अभी नहीं चाहिए. Okay, मेरी बोली सुनो अभी. Methyl propionyl and this is vinyl. So anything, any combination may be given in an image based MCQ question. Okay, so this you should know. Again I am showing you methyl vinyl, methyl vinyl, methyl propionyl and propionyl methyl. Rest, this thing is a pyrrole ring, tetrapyrrole ring, which has got a central iron. Okay, so this is basically the structure of heme. Okay, so in a protoporphyrin ring, 4 substituted pyrrole rings are linked by 4 methynyl bridge. These are methynyl bridges. These are known as bridges. Okay, these are methynyl bridges. Okay, this one. So in a protoporphyrin ring, 4 substituted pyrrole rings are linked by 4 methynyl bridge. Okay, and a planar network of conjugated double bonds of heme absorbs the visible light, and that gives a red color to heme. So if anyone asks you why hemoglobin or heme is red in color, okay, number one, an aromatic compound, any cyclical compound absorbs a wavelength, okay, but it is this 4 pyrrole ring that is connected with 4 methynyl bridges. Those double bonds actually absorb all other wavelength and they emit, okay, they let go of the red component, and that is why it's red in color. Okay, I think you know this. Something which is green, it is absorbing all other wavelength and it is reflecting green only. So that's why everything is red when it comes to blood. Okay, and lastly, the iron in heme, it is actually in ferrous form, which is in reduced state. We all know oxidized iron is in ferric form. Okay, and iron is located in the protoporphyrin ring system that we have showed you multiple time. And this iron of heme is actually hexavalent. So you saw that it is connected in 4 ways to the 4 pyrrole rings. Okay, so 2 valencies are actually empty, right? So here comes the most important information of this whole class, right? So iron, the examiner will ask you how iron, all the 6 valencies are satisfied. You just tell me. So 4 bonds are linked to nitrogen of 4 pyrrole rings. Okay, 5th bond is located with proximal histidine of globin chain. This is a very important MCQ. So take the screenshot of this and remember. And the 6th bond is with oxygen. Okay, so 4. Okay, this is the, again I will show you. So this is actually 3-dimensional structure, right? So see, 4 bonds of iron are linked with nitrogen of 4 pyrrole rings. Fine. 5th bond is connected to the proximal histidine. Okay, so this, if we make it 2-dimensional, there will be 4 pyrrole rings. Okay, and central there will be oxygen. So this whole thing is this. Okay, now we are showing the up and down. Okay, the something which is going into and out of the plane of the board. So on the top, it is connected to a histidine molecule that is known as proximal histidine. Okay, proximal histidine is also labeled as F8, and the 6th valency is connected to the oxygen, that is below. Okay, oxygen. There will be another question, that is how the 2 valencies of oxygen are satisfied. Oxygen is connected number 1 to iron, okay, and oxygen, the another valency of oxygen is connected to the distal histidine. So there are 2 histidine molecules that plays a role in hemoglobin. One is proximal histidine that is connected to the iron, and one is a distal histidine that is connected to the oxygen. Okay, so this is how all the 4 iron is bound to hemoglobin, and this is how all the 6 valencies of iron are satisfied. And the iron content in hemoglobin is 3.4 milligram of iron per gram of hemoglobin. very important, 3.4 mg of iron per gram of hemoglobin. Okay. What is the role of iron in hemoglobin? This, even if I don't teach you, you'll be able to tell. Okay, the main role is carrying of oxygen, okay, delivery and use of oxygen by blood, muscle. So this is the most important role that iron plays. Okay, iron helps in binding of oxygen to hemoglobin. Okay, oxygen gets bound to hemoglobin and they reach to every corner and every cell of the body. Fine, there is no dispute. So what is the amount required, right? What is the required amount of oxygen delivery to the cell? See, that we will be discussing later. Okay, just know this, iron is actually required for oxygen delivery to the cell, and without oxygen delivery the cell will simply die. They will be unable to perform any work. So all aerobic exercise, even if I am now talking, okay, it needs oxygen. Okay, so generally it supports all aerobic. It has been postulated that lack of iron in the body, okay, if iron is low, what will happen? In case of anemia, whenever a patient is complaining of anemia, our iron content is very low, the first complaint he or she that will do to the physician is he is getting tired. Okay, this is what happens. The reduces aerobic capacity and impairment of oxygen performance or endurance. He can perform one task fine, but as long when he is trying to get up 10 stairs repeatedly, endurance means sustainability of exercise will be very low. Okay, and this iron in heme actually, I told you this iron in heme gives a red color because this iron in heme leads to the formation of tetrapyrrole ring and all methynyl bridges. So everything. So next, so see, this is the thing that happens. The visible portion, okay, the red color arises from differences between the energy levels of d orbitals in the ferrous atom. I think we will skip this to the next class, okay, but just know this, there are two factors that contribute to the red color of hemoglobin. Okay, heme is also red color. Okay, the iron in hemoglobin is also red in color. Why heme is red in color? Heme is red in color due to presence of methynyl bridges in the tetrapyrrole ring. Okay, and other than that, iron individually is also red in color because of this. Okay, but this is not so important for you to know. Okay, the electronic conformation in the d orbital actually there is some difference of energy absorption, and that's why again red light gets emitted. So these are the two reasons why the whole thing is red in color. In the next class we will be discussing the rest of it. Okay, and mind it, this will be a long series of lecture. So whatever I told you till now, the main thing is the structure of hemoglobin, how the two alpha and beta chains interact with each other, how they form the protoporphyrin ring, what are the relation between alpha and beta, their alpha helices, all of that. Okay, so next we will be discussing in next class, which is coming Wednesday. Okay, so okay, bye.